So I will bring, of course, my strengths, my successes, but I will also bring in my vulnerabilities, and I will also bring in my failures and my perception about how society treats me. So whether I'm a man or a woman or a trans person or a person of different ethnic origin or race or caste or religion or body type or ability, I deserve to be in a place which will make me feel psychologically safe. So when we see corporates waking up and doing affirmative action, what they're doing is actually reinvesting in their own organizations to make people more productive, make people wanting to stay back, get great net promoter score, um, getting people to be retained on a longer basis, and all of this for a very fraction of amount under the inclusion and diversity budget.
A lot of companies now, private companies especially, they started, talking about these things and, acceptance in workspaces. And you yourself work in one of in the private sector. So, what do you believe are the most effective ways for companies to, create more diverse and inclusive workspaces, given your work profile, especially?
I think every organization has now woken up to the reality that all of this strategy is great, but culture will eat strategy for breakfast. And culture is, it can't be devoid of people. And all of us constitute that same peoplehood within the organization. So you can't tell me, oh, I'm going to celebrate all the successes of Zainab and leave her failures and vulnerability at home. I unfortunately can't, just like I can't leave parts of my body when I come to work. I can't leave parts of my mind or my lived realities when I come to work. So I will bring, of course, my strengths, my successes, but I will also bring in my vulnerabilities, and I will also bring in my failures and my perception about how society treats me. So whether I'm a man or a woman or a trans person or a person of different ethnic origin or race or caste or religion or body type or ability, I deserve to be in a place which will make me feel psychologically safe. So when we see corporates waking up and doing affirmative action, what they're doing is actually reinvesting in their own organizations to make people more productive, make people wanting to stay back, get great net promoter score, um, getting people to be retained on a longer basis, and all of this for a very fraction of amount under the inclusion and diversity budget. So here they are not spending crores of rupees on advertising, on brand building, because people become your brand. People become your ambassadors.
So for people who are, aspiring to make a difference, and especially in this field, what advice would you give them?
The future holds something beautiful if you only decide to work towards it, if you decide to persevere. Let absolutely no one decide who you are or what you can be or what you should be. In an age where everyone is distributing certificates of nationalism, the best nationalist thing that you can do is to be your true authentic self. And that would mean embracing yourself with all of your vulnerability, your successes, and give yourself time. It's a highly competitive world, ever changing, dynamic, disruptive. Make yourself relevant. This is especially for women and girls and all other marginalized communities listening to you. Read, learn to speak, articulate your position. It doesn't matter. You can speak in your regional language, you can speak in your mother tongue, but use the opportunity to convey what you feel internally. And if you feel a Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, Tamil, Telugu, any language that suits you to bring out your articulate best, do that. Never forget to upskill yourself, because there are very few opportunities available for upskilling. Upskilling is a lifelong commitment. Just because you may have done some college or graduation or post graduation and some certification, that's not the end, it's only the beginning. People who upskill themselves will find themselves relevant at every crossroad or intersection. So you may have natural calamities, human made disasters come in, but upskilling will help you to be relevant and to be of need to the company. The third most important part for me is that remember, you create value. It doesn't matter if you are a person begging on the street to a CEO taking a nine-figure salary yet. There is some value that you bring not only to the economic system but also to the society in general. Realize self respect starts from within. Only if you truly embrace yourself will the world be able to embrace you. And not everyone is going to stand by you, but this is a test that we all need to go through. So if you may be a Muslim woman coming from Bharuch, or a weaver in Varanasi, or a textile handloom person say in Tamil Nadu, all of us may come in with different realities, but we are contributing and we can have the potential of making it great. So here we often talk about how one person like a chai wala can become a prime minister. But let me tell you, if a person like me who used to beg on the streets or sell her body for sex can become where I can come and realize her potential, and I'm only realizing my potential, I have not reached the zenith. There are many more steps to go, many more milestones to breach, and many more concrete ceilings to break. So look at this as an opportunity. It will be difficult, but you can overcome it.
Have you noticed, any, since your the last 20 years, have you noticed, any um, examples of, successful diversity and inclusion initiatives that have had a positive impact on communities?
Coming from this world, I think there are many initiatives. Let's look at the skill and hire programs done by people. And it's a pure case of affirmative action. While there may be some resistance to reservations in the private sector, but nothing stops you from doing affirmative action. In a world today that's getting increasingly dominated by artificial insurance, it's a pity that only one of the four creators of this artificial intelligence technology happens to be a woman or a girl. That means there's a lot more that needs to be done in this space. Irrespective of the fact that the last 10, 15 years have seen immense contribution, immense investments in women and girls from a STEM perspective, we need to grow, we need to double up, triple our efforts. And this would mean that quadrupling those efforts for the most marginalized. I happened to read an interview, or see an interview rather, of Sudha Murthy, who talks about her challenges when she was in university and how she had to deal with a lot of misogyny, including not having access to, say, a toilet. But this was like 30 years ago, and unfortunately, even till today, India's reality hasn't changed for some sectors who believe that there's no space for women or people of other genders here. The second most important initiative, which I think is the returnship program for people who have taken a career break for whatever reason. It could be a life incident, marriage, childbirth, loss of someone, moving cities, pursuing higher education, or just a pause in your career to reset where you want to go in life. And I'm not calling it a returnship program for women because, yes, women will continue to be major beneficiaries of this, but there are increasing large number of people who want to start at a second career. That could mean anyone. It could be a man. It could be a person of a different or diverse gender. It could mean a person with a different orientation or ability. And we need to wake up to this possibility. Yes, there are people already doing it. Recognition of unpaid work, caregiving for elders, I think that has grown. The most important thing that I feel is the investment that corporates are making in building communities of care. Now, you may call them employee resource group, business resource group, allyship, but what we are building is really supportive ecosystems of care which go beyond the four walls of your organization into into something that is psychologically, physically safe. It is inclusive, it broadens your horizon and makes you a responsible citizen, a better human being. Um, and how beautiful is that? And lastly, what I feel is that in today's day and age, where one looks at an increasingly hostile social space for minorities, it is organizations who realize that politics is not something which is now limited to social media space or what we hear screaming in the newsrooms. It affects all of us because all of us now have somehow graduated to a different level. I'm going to use the word graduated to a different level of political, awareness, and each one of us takes it very differently. So it's not an issue that can be left for people to figure out on their own, but creating a safe environment for everyone. I think these are some very noteworthy causes. Some of the initiatives around people with disability have been something really which are game changers. I must say this, that earlier when we saw persons with disability, we would find, like, say, a front desk or a back office job, and maybe it felt okay, we finally managed to get someone, we're treating them with respect, etc. But what about people with atypical advantage, people on the mental health spectrum with autism? How do we There are many organizations on working on creating, because they realize that if we invest in the right kind of training, skills building, they can do certain levels of work which other people on the spectrum may not be able to do, like, say, repetitive work, mechanical work, in terms of which is just doing things. And without realizing this, that this is really contributing to the cause of nation building, not country building, but nation building, where you're taking some of the most disenfranchised communities and building them to propel a new country forward. And I believe India, with all of its diversity and the fact of industrial revolution that we are going through, will be able to really tell the world in a few years from now that here we are not only thought leaders, we are practice leaders, we are enablers, and we will work with a population that's largely young, but also different kinds of population.
Would you say that, is that the in the next 10 years, those are the changes you would really like to see, or are there more?
So just like the 7 year marriage itch, every 7 years I try to do something different. So the first phase of my life was in terms of 7 years of identifying and self-accepting and embracing myself. The next 7 years was building on my professional excellence, about working in the sphere. Fortunately, I had really great allies and sponsors. My previous boss in UNDP, Alka Narang, the person who introduced me to KPMG, the CHRO at that point of time, Unmesh Pawar, my current boss, Neetu Bhushan at Pernod Ricard, all realized that your abilities are not limited by your identity. So go ahead and live your full potential. So after working for a long time, for a decade in the social development space, I moved on to something totally different, private sector. Imagine me taking people to court and then wearing a coat and going to a corporate job. Did that, and then started saying that I have a comfortable job, I have a seven-figure salary, but what about giving back to society? Yes, I do continue my activism. I work towards shaping public policy, but let's also create a economic ecosystem that puts money into people's pocket, because once you have money in your pocket, you can find way at the table. You can buy your seat at the table. It might be uncomfortable for somebody that a trans person is finally entering a five-star hotel and claiming space at the table, which people thought was the privilege of a limited few. But that's how change happens. People need to be comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable. And in 7 years from now, I really hope that government and other stakeholders would have progressed with some legislation.